to try to impose a property tax in excess of the tax cap would require you not only to have a truth and uh, truth and taxation hearing, but you'd have to go to referendum to get it approved if you wanted to go higher than that. So this basically it's topped out. The only increase that Wooddale experiences in the property tax is through some growth in the EAV. I thought this was kind of an interesting statistic. The average for these 29 communities revenue per capita was $1,801, and Wooddale's was $1,591. And the expenditure per capita was 2008 on average, and Wooddale was 1,704. So while you'll see that in both cases, what a city spends is higher than what a city takes in terms of revenue, Wooddale is up there on the higher end for both revenues and expenditures. From the highest to the lowest, Wooddale is 21st in population. It's 12th in revenue per capita, 11th in expenditure per capita, and we're 10th in terms of sales tax generated, but that's going from the lowest to the highest. Remember that in this survey, Schaumburg is in there, Oakbrook is in there. They've got the big sales tax bases. So 10th is respectable too. This is just a graph of how that worked with those 29 communities. You can see where the dot is. That's where Wooddale's revenues and expenditures come together. So the red line is the expenditures. It's just slightly higher than the revenues. But we're right in the middle of those 29 communities. This year we've got some new sources of revenue. These are going to require decisions by the council on where those funds should be put and how they should be utilized. The first is the 1% non-home rule sales tax. I was very grateful to the Department of Revenue for being able to give me a good estimate of what they thought this tax would be. They gave me the last 12 months of sales tax generated in Wooddale minus the sales tax on food and prescription drugs. And I was able to calculate that on an annual basis, Wooddale would receive about $2.3 million. However, for 07-08, you won't start getting that tax until July 1st of 2007. So we're only going to get 10 months of it. And that's why I've got $2 million estimated for the non-home rule sales tax in the upcoming budget.
Could I jump in real quick? Saying that, yeah, it's effective July 1, but we don't actually see that money for what, 3 months after?
That's right, but then we accrue it. We have to recognize it as revenue whether it's here or not.
Okay, so no, I understand.
So it's
that,
earned. I mean, it's earned as of July.
Okay.
It'll be earned as of July 31st, the first month's
So
tax.
we want everybody to go out and spend after July 1st.
That's right. That's right. And then excess building department fees. I did obtain a community development estimate of building department fees for the new budget year, and this is the excess over $425,000 a year. We decided that was the average, or that was the floor for building department fees. So when I'm doing the budgets now, I'm projecting out 3 more years and saying anytime the building department fees or the building permit fees go over $425,000, that excess is put in the economic development fund. At least that's what I've used as my assumption in the budgets. But it's up to the council how you want to continue to use those. That's the amount that's in the budget. We have new police revenue. The chief will be talking to you about a red light violation program. And while there are some costs associated with that, he's anticipating $95,000 of new revenue in the 07-08 year. The rental housing inspection fees, brand new source of revenue, $50,000. Once that employee is hired, these fees will be charged to inspect those properties. I'm sorry?
Is that what your average that this will bring in, 50,000?
I just obtained the number from community development. I don't know how they derived it. And then finally, additional utility tax due to the ComEd rates. This may be a little bit of an iffy number because I just took 22% of what I believe our ComEd utility tax will be. There's no other way to estimate it. I have no idea how many kilowatt hours or anything like that. So because we impose the utility tax, it's on the total bill.
Question, Maggie. The first one was 2 million, And you estimated the average would be 2,300,000,
Yes,
but we're only talking 6 months?
10 months. 10 months from July.
10 months,
Yes.
okay, thank you.
Alderman Subak.
Maggie, you started off by saying that we'll have to make policy decisions on where to spend this, or save it, or do whatever, but in reality, the 1%, that's earmarked by statute to capital projects, infrastructure. The excess building permit fees, we have a policy in place, but it's debatable. The new police revenue, is something new. The rental housing inspection fees, that's actually gonna go back to pay for the new position we're creating to do those inspections, so I don't think we can view this as a straight 2.7. The other, the 95,000 in new police revenue, we are starting to do our DUI prosecution in-house, but I don't think we're gonna include any of those numbers in this year's budget, because on a typical in-house DUI, even though now we're gonna start getting more of the money savings by local prosecution, most of the times you don't need to pay those fines for a year out. So even though we started doing it this fall, we might not be seeing those tickets paid for 1 year later. So we got to be a little careful, at least on the DUIs, as to what we're going to expect.
Well, this 95,000 is not for DUI, it's red light.
Right.
It's the new red light program. And this is really by way of just informing you on one piece of paper, what sort of revenues are coming in that you didn't have before. But we already have plans for where to spend it. So I've got more slides. And then obviously the city can consider for other projects that are upcoming, not only in this budget year 07-08, but as time goes on, special service area financing, low interest government loans, revenue bonds, which could be used in the water sewer fund, alternate revenue bonds, which involve pledging a particular revenue source like the utility tax in order to pay off those bonds, and then finally general obligation bonds. That's just to keep those thoughts in mind. Here are the things that all of us have to think about in terms of what needs to be done in the city, both next year and coming up. First one is streets and sidewalk projects. We're estimating 1.5 million a year, but actually for next year's budget, we're only talking about $1,050,000 that's actually been planned for. But overall, if you look at our capital projects list, $1.5 million is about what's needed. Storm sewer replacements, $150,000 a year. Water sewer main replacements, $2 million a year. The new wastewater treatment plant, $30 million. We don't have dollar figures for the economic development plans, although this is an ongoing process, so that is something we don't want to forget about. Financial software replacement, we've got $180,000. We did budget about $90,000 in the current fiscal year, but we're not going to be able to spend that money until next year because the selection hasn't been made yet. Additional landscape, streetscape. I do not have numbers yet for the tourism fund, so I don't know what's been planned by the streetscape committee, but again, we need to remember that that is an item that is of ongoing interest, so we need to find funding for it. Equipment replacement, about $275,000 a year, because that's used not only to replace the squad cars, but also all the other vehicles that are used in city services. Information technology, about $105,000 a year. That includes replacement of some computers or parts, plus what we pay to our IT service people, plus what we pay for ongoing maintenance agreements. You'll see all that when we get to the information technology budget. A new item this year is the police interoperability radios. We're going to need $50,000 put away so that by the year 2010, the city can afford to pay $150,000 for these new radios. And the chief will be talking to you more about that when we get into the capital projects fund. Again, it's on the list so that we don't forget it. GIS full implementation. We have a number of $500,000. That's also on our capital projects list. The number is not firm because part of the GIS implementation will probably be done in conjunction with our new financial software. So we don't really know what that number is. Again, it's an item we can't forget.
If I can interrupt you for a moment, Alderman Subak.
No, after she's finished, I can.
Okay.
Okay.
And then the Public Works Facility, we have $1 million. That's starting next year, $375,000. Um, and this is for remodeling the Public Works facility and expanding it. And then finally, the land acquisition loan. If you'll recall, the city borrowed $1,250,000 in debt certificates, and those are due in May. Now, part of that, all of that money was used to acquire land, and part of that land is being sold, and it'll be sold for $640,000 plus some extra costs. So we need another $700,000 to pay off the bank on these debt certificates, and we are accruing interest on it. And I believe the rate is 6.5%. I might be a little high on that, but we definitely have to remember that that needs to be paid off, and there is no money in the land acquisition fund. There's just the debt in that fund right now.
Well, that's why I wanted to ask. One of those, I think on that, we're hoping that we could use the money from the grade separation project to pay off, I think that's the Iliopolis. The 700,000 is probably the Iliopolis property that we purchased.
Well,
So-
we tried that, but our invoices were turned away. We did try to do that.
Yeah, long term. Long term, I think we're gonna try it again. And then the other, when we talk about additional landscapes / streetscape, one thing I remind the committee is, the ornamental lighting program, which started years ago, when we decided what lights to put on. They started on Irving Park Road, and then because of the political force, they got put towards the 4th Ward, going on Wooddale Road, and the 1st Ward, and the 3rd Ward, and the 2nd Ward, I believe, the other way on Wooddale Road, didn't get any. And I know we have an estimated cost of $750,000, and last year we budgeted $50,000 or whatever it was, and none of that money got spent. I think we need to keep continuing to fund that. $50,000 last year was a joke. We need to fund that properly, and like over the next 3 years, put enough money aside so you can say, here's the engineering in year 1, here's the purchase of the lights in year 2, and here's the installation of those lights in year 3, so that they're installed on Wooddale Road, going the other way away from the 4th Ward, from Wooddale Road probably up till, Windsor, and then start spreading them out further, so that at least Wooddale Road then is done, and we can wait for the grade separation and to finish Irving Park Road.
Ptolemy.
Yeah. Well, first off, there was no political, those lights are, thank you. No, what I want to say is that I think some of these things, this is good information, but I think some of these things we're not really going to be able to talk about further until we actually see, start seeing all the budget. I mean, because one of the things that struck me is that we all said it, that this year, this next fiscal year, we're really not going to be doing any roads. Okay? We're not going to do any major
reconstruction.
We're
There
going
were
to do
plenty resurfacing projects, especially in the 3rd Ward, because we had
No,
the
no, no,
we
I
had the street
stand
that's
corrected.
spread out, and it was the places that already had curb and gutter that we're going to do resurfacing and not do reconstruction, because those are the heavy-ended projects. But we weren't going to just skip them entirely. And we were also going to focus on those sidewalks. We had the petitions sitting for the last 3 years, and working on
Exactly.
getting those involved.
Exactly. My only point is that until we see what specifically the kind of monies we're talking about, because there may be some possibilities that, that some of the money that's needed for the streetscape and that might be able to come out of what we would have put into capital projects. One of the things, Maggie said earlier is the $2 million, estimated $2 million. And Marshall, you said it yourself, that is earmarked specifically for, infrastructure improvements. So now, we fund, and I know everybody knows this, but right now we fund capital projects primarily with our utility tax. So, that utility tax now is going to probably go directly into the general fund, and now you're going to take the $2 million that's coming in from your sales tax, and you're going to put that towards your capital projects. So, I mean, we're really going to have to talk about the monies and where they're going to come from and what we're going to, how exactly we're going to deal with them, because it is important that we don't cross over, because I don't want anybody to think that, because we passed the 1% sales tax that, now we're home free for the next, 5 or 10 years or something, because, we're not. I mean, we've got to make sure we use that money exactly for what it's supposed to be used for, but the monies that we don't subsidize with the utility tax, the general fund. And yet, that's where, primarily where that money's gonna go to. So we've got some issues, so when we're looking at the budget, we really need to make sure we're addressing all those issues. That's,
But Maggie, I would also like to see the numbers as if we didn't pass the referendum, not to fund the $1 million of road projects this year resurfacing, but to show the utility tax not in the general fund. I would still like to see, because that historically, 100% of that money went into capital projects. So I would just like to see what are the numbers with leaving it the way it was. How does the general fund look without that money going in there? And then say, okay, of the utility tax, we got to put, last year we put 25% in, whatever the number was. This year maybe it has to be 50. Maybe it only needs to be 10, but at least do it the status quo first.
Actually, none of the utility tax is in the general fund budget. It's all in capital projects. The telecommunications tax is in the general fund, okay? I wanted to show this slide, and then I'll show you how I'm envisioning one way to break down this capital projects money. The equipment replacement fund, the information technology fund, both get funded from the general fund. So we make an operating transfer once a year, and I think that can continue indefinitely. I think there'll be enough adequate funds generated to pay for our equipment replacement needs and for information technology. Now, in capital projects, we have 100% of the utility tax, not the non-home rule, but the non-home rule sales tax. Sorry about the error. And we usually transfer some monies from motor fuel tax, and that is dependent on what IDOT will approve in terms of our roadway projects. Okay, but those are the three main things. Then we've got the Economic Development Fund. We've put $821,000 approximately in there based on council direction. That was excess building department fees. So that money is there and can be used for economic development purposes. And then finally, we have the Tourism Fund, which is used to fund special events and has been used in the past to fund things like the streetscape and the landscape. So when we get to that budget, that'll be the source of the revenue.
Okay.
Hotel motel tax, and then it'll be some interest income.
Alderman Subak.
Before you came on board, 100% of the telecommunications tax went into capital projects, and you correctly said that maybe it shouldn't have.
It went into water sewer depreciation.
Okay,
That was the capital projects fund for the water sewer fund.
right, and that was subsidized in that fund, and we adjusted the rates. Last year, what percentage of the telecommunications tax went into the general fund?
I think it was 55% and 45% went to water sewer depreciation. Then we closed the fund.
Okay, I still not, I still would like to see the numbers of keeping the status quo from last year, that 55%, because that telecommunication tax, that's big dollars. I would like to see the numbers, 55% into the general fund and 45%, as we did last year, into the depreciation fund, just to see where that general fund flushes out.
Okay.
Unless those are gonna keep it, you know,
Well, I guess I can show version 1 and version 2 of the budget. I mean, that will be easy enough to do. But the utility tax for the last several years has gone 100% to capital projects. And there is no water sewer depreciation fund anymore, so I'll just have to show it going into water sewer fund. That proportionate share of telecommunications.
Right.
Okay, yeah, that can be done. Okay. Here are the items that we've identified in this year's budget that need to be reflected somewhere. The $1,050,000 for streets and sidewalks, clearly that is a capital project item. The Public Works Facility, 1/3 of the total, that is a capital projects item. The train depot lighting, and that last item, the infrastructure maintenance fee settlement, both $50,000. Those have to be done in tandem. That's part of the settlement agreement, that the city spend $50,000. So the train depot lighting and that 50 together will make up what the city needs to spend. Then we have a city hall renovation study. This is for space utilization.
Alderman Tomey.
Sorry.
I thought, but out of that 100,000, because that's what it amounts to, right? The train depot lighting and the IMF settlement, it's 100,000. Weren't we getting a rebate back on some of that? So that rebate should reflect, because I think the difference was what, like about 47,000 or something like that, or 50-some thousand that we still had to pay out?
Yeah, the total
we have to show the total amount that's going out. We're getting back 25,000. We have to pledge the total amount. I'd have to go back and get the memo exactly, but we have to carry that in that fund to show how it's going to be spent, that's all.
Okay, but we
are
will show.
getting some of that back. yeah.
Okay, because we had said that as far as, that we would take the balance of that, in that case, would come out of that economic redevelopment fund to pay for that.
Alderman Subak.
Payoff of the land acquisition loan is not a capital project, and police radios are not capital projects. That belongs in the equipment
Well, these are requirements that we need to be saving for. The police radios, we won't be paying for those for 3 years. But we just need to earmark some money so that we have it when we're ready for it.
Again,
And the
that-
payoff
that's-
of the land, that's up to the council. I just didn't want to forget it.
But why would the radios, it's not a capital project. Then we're gonna start pulling, next thing will be computers out of there. The radios should come out of the police budget or forfeiture funds or whatever, but that should come out of the police budget.
Mr. Manager.
All right, this is a whole new radio system. This is basically what's happening is the 911 system is funding the infrastructure. All the communities in DuPage County will have to replace all the radios. This is not just replacing the normal radios. This is a one-time replacement. And then after those radios are replaced, because it's such a large amount, then it will go into the maintenance fund. It's a new expenditure. It's a whole new radio system. We will go into that in detail when we go into the police budget and explain that. It's considered a capital project outlay.
Alderman Subak.
When we placed the phone system that was very expensive, we didn't classify that as a capital project. So it's, even though GASB 36, we might be amortizing the money, when I think of capital projects, I think of public works buildings, I think of streets and sidewalks, I think of infrastructure for water mains and sewer mains. I don't think of radio systems, just like I don't think of computer systems, just like I don't think of telephone systems. I think those are more, maybe it comes out of the IT budget. I'm just trying to match everything up correctly.
Well,
I'm going to
and-
make excuse me. I'm going to make a suggestion. Do you want to, Ms. Powers, do you want to go through to the end of your slides, and
Yes.
then we can go back and you can ask where you need the immediate guidance on, and we can.
Yes,
Okay.
and actually, I probably shouldn't have labeled this slide the Capital Projects Fund. I should have just called it Capital Projects. I did not mean to imply it was all coming out of the Capital Projects Fund. We're going to use the equipment. See, yeah, I'm trying to show you in large dollars, because if you don't give us guidance, we can't give the budgets to you. We won't be able to finish them. I needed to put it on one page so you could see the totals. But you're absolutely right. It's equipment, and that's where it will go. It's not going to be a capital project. Okay? So, again, I'm recapping what monies are going to come into the Capital Projects Fund, $3.8 million, and I've identified on the prior slide $2.2 million. What's available is $1.5 million next year. When I first did this slide, I didn't have it available for anything because I hadn't finished the water and sewer fund budget. But lo and behold, I did finish the water and sewer budget today, and we need about $1.1 million if we're going to do the water and sewer main replacements that have been identified by Gary in that budget. So just to recap the water and sewer fund, the council raised the rates, and we've got a whole series of rate increases. They're all effective on September 1st. Right now, the rate for water is $4.55 per thousand. Sewer is $4.50. Each of those rates go up 25 cents on September 1st. When we did the rate study and the rate recommendation, the plan was to generate $1 million annually for maintenance and capital replacement. And these rates do that. They work as they were intended. However, the need for the water and sewer mains is in excess of $1 million per year. So this is one decision point for the council as to whether they want to use the non-home rule sales tax to begin to help pay for some of that water and sewer replacement. So, I mean, it's allowed under the rules as far as it being infrastructure, but it's it's definitely a policy issue. I took the proposed budget for 0708 and carried it out for 3 more years beyond that, and you'll see, look at the yellow column is the capital outlay that's been identified for those 4 years, and the red, of course, is the deficit if we just rely on the water and sewer operating revenues. So there's going to be a need for some additional capital. Clearly that can be borrowed, you can do revenue bonds, you can do things like that, or some of the non-home rule sales tax can be used so that water and sewer rates can proceed the way they've already been legislated. I've got, this is in round numbers, what would be needed if the water fund were to pursue its capital projects as they are being projected. So it would be 1.1 million in 0708, about 500,000 in 0809, almost 625,000 in 0910, and 303,000 in 1011. Clearly, the further out we go, the less likely it is to be able to hit that number right on target. But that's just to keep in mind how some of that money could be utilized. What I'm planning on doing for our next budget meeting is coming to you with the general fund budget. I can certainly do it with the 2 versions to show what would happen, what surplus or deficit would be with or without the utility tax. But then we need to proceed finishing the other funds. And so this discussion this evening helped staff know how to proceed. What we don't want to give you is budgets that need so many alterations that you can't recognize them, because we don't have that kind of time. And it's too confusing for everyone. So I guess now is, where we get some direction.
Alderman Subak.
I think the payoff of the land acquisition loan, we can wait. I don't think the interest rate was, I thought we got a better rate than 6%. But I would still wait 1 more year on that, because let's see where the federal money comes in. Because I think once we pay that, it might be harder to recoup that money back. They might say, well, as part of the grade separation project, that's Wooddale's contribution. So I would like to do it that way on that. The other issue is on the water projects. The slide right before the end with the yellow of how much we're spending, keeping that number constant, knowing that there are rising costs, spending the same amount each year on those capital projects, eventually you'll be doing less and less of those water and sewer main projects. So not tonight and not in this budget, but at some point we have to do an analysis of what the rising costs are of those projects, and do we want, with this additional sales tax we're going to get, do we want to float bonds that would be paid for by this, that we can get more of the water projects done within the next 5 years, that they're going to last longer? Is that better, or do we keep doing them as we're doing them? I would like to see that sometime, not in this budget, but after that point.
Mr. Mayor.
There's some additional good news and bad news. I understand the Water Commission also approved a one-time rebate of $40 million to the charter customers, whatever our share of that's going to be. I don't know if you know a figure on that.
I don't, but I do have some news about the water rate decrease. It's no different than the rate decrease we already have. They're just making it more permanent. We're only paying $1.24 per thousand right now. They dropped that rate from $1.43 a year ago, a little more than a year ago. And when I attended that meeting with the DWC, they were proposing a rate stabilization reserve so that they could continue to keep the rate reduced. But there will not be a further rate reduction. In Wooddale's case, that comes to about $110,000 in real money. That's it. There's nothing more to be had. They're not going below the 124. They're going to stay at that point. And the $40 million, I need to look at that, Mayor, because I presume they're going to do it based on pumpage.
Correct.
Total pumpage.
On the negative side, though, you've got cable franchise fees as 1.5% of our revenue. It looks like that may be going away in the not-too-distant future. That fee may be eliminated. And I also understand telecom tax, that most of the cities are seeing declining revenues as more people, more businesses go to voice over internet.
Yeah,
Well-
it's impossible to all we do is take what the state and the municipal league tell us in terms of estimates to the best we can with that.
Sure.
I mean, you know,
You just may have to adjust their peers based on the income they're receiving now that is starting to trend down.
Alderman Subak.
I think in addition to capital projects, I don't know what we're gonna have to pay as far as a portion of the train station depot. I know that most of it was donated by developers, but I think they said there was gonna be a shortfall. I don't know if that's gonna be if that's in this year's budget, or if we need to be budgeted for next year. I wouldn't wanna be able to not pay the bill for that if it comes. Secondly, Maggie, last year I think we estimated sales tax flat, and we used a figure of $3 million. I think.
well, I'm using the figures from the Department of Revenue, and they were current through December of 2006. So it's hard because we're not home rule. I can't get the kind of details I'd like to have, but
No, not for the breakout. I'm saying for the overall, what you're gonna estimate for sales tax. We've kind of been keeping that number flat.
yes.
And last year, I think we used a number of $3 million, or maybe 3.1 million.
Yeah, it may have been. I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me.
Do you know what number you're gonna use for sales tax estimates for the general fund?
Yes, I'm going to use the exact same number that the Department of Revenue gave me, plus the sales of food and drugs. They gave me two columns. One was with the sale of food and drugs, and one without. So one is the non-home rule sales tax estimate, and one's the regular.
Okay, but I'm not talking about the referendum increase.
No.
I'm talking about just
Regular sales tax.
Okay, I didn't. In years past, we kind of just looked at the historical data and said, "Oh, we had 2.9, 2.9, 3.1," and we were probably guessing as to what.
Well, I have all that on the individual revenue sheet, so you'll be able to see the history of the sales
Yeah.
tax when I give you
I
the,
think we
the
should
whole
plan on
budget.
it being flat one more
Yeah.
year. I don't think it's.
It is. It pretty much is.
Ms. Powers, are there any other specific areas that you're looking for policy on or request on?
Chairman Winger, I think that we need to give you various versions, but we need to give you a staff recommendation in each of these budgets, and then be able to do some what-if scenarios. If I mean, it was useful to have your comments here, but I mean, you want to look at the expenditures also. We just sort of needed some guidance on where these revenues should be, because it's very difficult to prepare budgets and not decide where their home is. So.
Sure.
I think we can proceed now, and the plan is to have the general fund to you for your next committee meeting, and then we'll do the rest of the funds at the subsequent meetings.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments before we move into our next item? Okay. Then that item is for information only at this point. Item 6, informational item as well, treasurer report for the month of December 2006. And when I took a look at this, it certainly looks a lot easier to look at after we did institute our policy. And it seems like it has come a long way, the treasurer's report. And one thing that jumped out at me, the water and sewer operating fund, and at least for the month of December, it looks like we were, you know, in this case, spending a little more than we were taking in. Now, maybe it's due to just the timing of certain projects or whatnot, but it's something to keep our eye on as we're looking at the budget process. Ms. Powers, do you wish to add anything before I open up for questions, comments?
No, thank you, Chairman Winger.
Any questions, comments? Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, could you give me a breakdown, 2 questions, of where the special service area accounts are on the IMED account? What bank that's in, or is that multiple banks, or?
The special service area 12, 13, and 14 are all at the Illinois funds, which is the U.S. Bank. And the IMET is a pool, so there's not any particular bank. When we need funds from there, we go through IMET. It's another pool.
Okay, and then the follow-up question regarding the Illinois funds. I thought when we did the review of the banks, Itasca Bank promised Illinois funds plus 25 basis points.
Yes,
So should we be moving more money to Itasca Bank?
we have already done so. It took
That'll
a
be
long,
reflected in January, or?
yes, it already took it took a lot longer than we thought to untangle all these commingled funds, and there were a lot of due to, due froms, and making the operating transfers. So I was talking to the assistant finance director the other day, and I said, I want you to get as close as possible to what the council approved in terms of the mix of funds. So that means we need to move more money out of the Illinois fund. So he's in the process of doing that. If it didn't, I'll get finished. It will be done shortly. But that is the goal, to go absolutely according to that model, because the Itasca Bank rate is wonderful. And you will see this in the budget that, I mean, the investment income looks so much better in all of the funds than it did before. So,
Alderman Subak?
I'm sorry, Meg, I forgot one issue, Madam Chairman, on the last one. Because we got this tonight, which I don't mind, on the capital project funds, one of the things is had City Hall renovation. I just want staff to understand, by everything coming on the list, and maybe not us getting all the comments we could out at 11:30, I don't want anybody to presume that that's like an acquiescence saying that we agree with that. If I would suggest staff on the City Hall renovation study, wait till after May 1st to bring that to council if you want to get my support. And I think PISAC, because a couple of us took a pledge that we're done with studies, or at least call it something else than a study, or do it after May 1st. You don't need to, you know.
Any other comments before we wrap up here? Okay, item 6, the treasurer report for information only. Item 7, items to be considered at future meetings. A, sales tax rebates and tax reductions. B, 2007-08 budget preparation. Any other items? I made a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Second. On the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. Call the Public Works meeting to order for February 8, 2007. Let the record reflect the same members are present. Make a motion to approve the minutes of January 11, 2007. Is there a second? Second. On the question, all in favor say aye. Motion passes. Next item is item number 4. This is the purchase of a chlorine equipment replacement. We went out for, the equipment is in excess of 20 years old. Some parts are no longer available. We went out to 2 local vendors, and we are looking to award the contract to Chemical Pump Sales in an amount not to exceed $22,000. That's my motion. Is there a second? Second. Gary, one question. What was the amount in the budget allocated for this?
We do have it in the capital fund, and it's basically going to come from other projects which are coming in under budget. This, and I don't have that value in front of me. I can give you that value, but it's less than 22,000 in the line item. But other line items are going to come in less, so we'll be fine under that overall budget.
Okay, Alderman Ptolemy?
My question is, you know, with us planning on looking at a new sewer plant, I mean, I would hope that we're not going to look, you know, that we're not going to be purchasing things to, I mean, I know we're talking about probably 5-10 years out before it happens, but, you know, big ticket items that we would have to do now, or we, you know, what am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is I don't want to spend money we don't have to spend now if we're going to build a new sewer plant.
And I wholeheartedly agree. A lot of these items that would be included in this purchase
Just to
would
keep
be
it
things
going.
that could be reused in the new treatment plant. Digital
Okay.
scales, for example. You know, a digital scale, you know, will last, and we can just move it to the new plant.
Okay.
Before you next month will be like a conveyor system for our south plant that's in this year's budget. That's something that could be reused. So I'm on board with you that
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next is item number 5. Gary did a request for proposals for professional services for architectural consultants to do a space need analysis as well as expansion of the public works facility. He got from a lot of different architects sent proposals. They were all over the board. Gary did a nice job in his memo dated February 7, 2007, identifying where they did work. And he is looking to go with Klubler, Skaken and Associates, an amount not, or KS&A, an amount not to exceed $5,200. They are the ones that are doing the train station, correct?
Correct.
So that's Gary's recommendation. I'd make a motion to approve the contract to KS&A in an amount not to exceed $5,200. Is there a second? On the question? All in favor say aye.
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Alderman Wesley.
On the Public Works, that's the one over, not the one on Irving Park Road, right?
No, this is the one on Central Avenue.
And what was the other bids for the other proposal?
They're listed in there. It's the last sentence, basically, of every paragraph for each consultant.
What was their prices?
That's,
BCA was $10,000. Interplan was 5,200, but they had the wrong scope of
Okay,
services.
I got, thank you.
GAT was 24,800. Okay, so again, these are professional services, so we want Gary to go with the most responsible bidder. So there's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next is the purchase of an aerial boom truck, also known as a bucket truck. Went out for proposals, or no, Gary's went out for proposals. We're hoping to have the bids back for February 13th, 2006 council
And then
meeting.
Yeah, I'd like to bring a handout, to get to you that meeting. And the reason why we're pushing to get it awarded in February is so that it can be delivered prior to the end of the fiscal year.
And you learned from the police chief, if you don't spend it in this budget, you might lose it in the next budget.
Well, and from the finance director who says that we can't just purchase it this year, we actually have to receive it this year. So-
Zero base, right, we start over. So, I'll make a motion to table this item to the council. Is there a second? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next item is the item number 7. It's the conceptual engineering services for the wastewater treatment plant. 2 days of engineering firms came in and gave proposals. The committee consisted of Gary Holm, Dave Graff, Brad Kittleson, Jeff, Alderman Coles, Alderman Pizak, and Alderman Chalky also sat in. It was a posted meeting, and they heard the proposals, and staff is recommending to go forward with negotiations with Baxter and Woodman. We don't really have any information as to the scope of the project or the cost. That'll be coming at a future time back to this committee.
Right, we're seeking authorization tonight to basically enter into talks with Baxter and Woodman to finalize the scope, finalize the cost, and then we would come back to the committee for approval of that.
Alderman Wesley?
I have one question. Now, this is for the new treatment plant, right?
This is for the proposed new treatment plant.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, are they also going to look at, in case of funding ain't there, of expanding somewhere else on that site?
Yeah, and we've talked about that at the selection committee level, and that'll be part of the negotiating of the scope, will be to talk about those things, and whether we want to include that in the scope of this study, or whether we want to just have this study do, task A, and then maybe later on we do task B.
No,
So
I would like both of them now. So
So
therefore, if the funding ain't there, we aren't spinning the wheels again.
I didn't participate, but I think before we award the contract, I would like Baxter and Woodman to come to a committee meeting because I still need to be sold on the fact that we need this. And I guess I think we do, but I would like to hear from one other person, I guess, if it's
Sure.
not too much,
I think it would be my intention to have, if we get authorization to go to talk with them, once we have a scope and a fee negotiated, when we come back to you for that approval at that meeting.
They should come and give a mini presentation as to what they're going to do and why, and
Exactly.
this how much it's going to cost, so the whole committee could hear that. Mayor Johnson.
Just want to clarify, are we agreeing with Alderman Wesley's point that we're not prejudging the study, that we're assuming it's going to be a new plant if it's going to be cheaper and more efficient to upgrade our existing facilities? Is that part of the scope of what they're looking at?
Gary?
The original idea of this conceptual study was to have them assume we're building a new plant and then tell us how many acres we should ask for so that we could then start talking in serious terms with the Forest Preserve District.
I
During
think,
the course of the interviews, we kind of all decided, we kind of looked at, what if scenarios, and then one of those was the idea of expanding our existing treatment plants. The Forest Preserve has pretty much told us they don't want us to expand South Plant, and with floodplain issues at the North Plant, that's really the only viable option we have left is to build a new plant.
it doesn't, I'm not sure that quite answers. Are we prejudging the study that we're assuming it's a new plant, or have we opened the scope to look at both facilities as well?
I think this study was just looking at it from a new plant.
I understand that, but
standpoint.
before we commit to spending the money, have we broadened the scope to include an analysis of the existing plants?
I
Whether
think-
it's more feasible, more economical to upgrade them?
I think that's, if council directs us to do that, I think that'd be fine. That'd be a step above what I think staff was even seeking to begin with.
Yeah, because I guess one of my concerns, I'll get you, Joe, was I know we think we need one, but and because of the capacity, we're told that we're at 90% or 95% capacity at both of these. But if they come in and say, well, you know, besides building a new one, new technology, if you strip these old ones and gut them, and new technology increases your capacity at the existing spaces, if we never told them to look into that, they'll say, well, we didn't tell you about that because we were focusing on just a new plant. And again, I don't want to delay it too long, but I think that's worthwhile.
And at this time, we had come before council with a modest approach, a modest cost, because remember, we had talked about a real small cost for this, just to get us going with the Forest Preserve District, to analyze our existing treatment plants, to see the viability of expanding them, to explore new technologies, plus then look for this selection site. We'll increase the scope and we'll increase the cost of this study, and that's fine if we feel we want to do that all up front. That'd be fine.
Alderman Coles?
We went through these for 2 days, and they figured we needed about 11.3 acres of land, which is over there, which they can. And we also talked about expanding it so we just don't build a plant for just a certain amount, that it can be expandable by all the different plants, all the different companies. And we also talked about the plant on Irvin Park and also in the forest preserve on the golf course. Well, the golf course, they can't expand because the forest preserve said no way. And this plant over here on the by Irvin Park, they don't have much room in there in order to change things around. See, so, and then the forest preserve wants to take over that land and make a sort of a park out of it, because it's going to be a little contaminated anyway when you get done tearing things down. So we've talked about just about everything, expanding and changing, and the new plant. We went through that for 4.5 hours on each day.
I guess.
And I guess.
So I don't want to change it. I don't want to reinvent the wheel.
First of all, you're going to find out that Baxter's going to try to. The first thing you got to do is what we decided is you have to find out how we're going to finance it, and there is nothing we can do until we find out how they're going to finance it. And Baxter was the only one out of the four that said that the first thing you got to do is find out if you can finance it. If we can finance it, there's no use talking without getting the finances. And the reason that we picked Baxter was because they're doing the plant in Itasca, and they've gone through all the outfits for licenses and everything for Itasca. So we figured that we could get a little advantage there, because they've just got done doing all their engineering stuff from Itasca. They even had to check the area for rattlesnakes. Now, you ever heard of a rattlesnake up here? I never seen one, but they had to check that. And I think personally that before we say anything about doing the other one, I think we should listen to what the man has to say first.
Okay, Alderman Ptolemy?
Yeah. I don't, I understand looking at our existing, and if there is a way to increase our existing, but I think in order to move ahead, with the forest preserve, we have to have a focus as far as telling these people exactly what we want right now. And from my perspective, I'm looking at it and saying, right now, we ask them to go and look at that site and do everything that's necessary so that we can sit down and start the conversation with the forest preserve, because as everybody knows, it's going to take a long time to work through all that. Then when that phase is done, as part of maybe a secondary phase of that, then look at our existing, before we sign the final dotted line, go back and look at the existing, because there's going to be a big cost difference in doing one and going back and reevaluating the other. I mean, if they go back and reevaluate the other, I guarantee you, you're looking at probably a couple $100,000. Well, I don't know if maybe I'm way off, but I would think at least $100,000, if not more, in just looking at our existing and having them come back and tell us what they can or can't do. I'm not saying we shouldn't do that, but I think we need to set one track first, and the track would be look at what we originally said, and that is building a completely new one, and then phase the secondary part in. Before we do that, let's look at what we're gonna, do we really need to do that, or can
Actually,
we
yeah,
build in the other?
I agree with Alderman Coles and told me that let's not change the scope at this point. I'm assuming as those guys were giving their presentation for those 2 days, they would have said, hey, Wooddale, why even looking at a new one? We can do all the capacity you need at your existing location.
We've talked about it internally at the staff level.
That's just not a reality.
The reality is that there's not much you can do with South Plant at all. South Plant is the way South Plant is, and you really can't make any substantive changes to South Plant. You can make some changes to North Plant to increase capacity up there with some of those new technologies. Can that get us through, right, that's the question. And that's the $1 million question or $30 million question. Can it really get you through the
Right.
next 50 years? And then the answer is probably not.
And I think we need to keep the scope narrow to keep it forward moving with the Forest Reserve, because if political things change, that might offer, or Addison changes, that offer might not be out there if we take too long.
See,
If we sleep on it. Alderman,
I came up with, if the industrial center decides that some of the buildings are too old to rebuild, condominiums might go in there.
With the
And if
Western
they
access,
throw in
yeah.
more condominiums up north, where is the sewer gonna go? It can't go to the North Plant. I mean, the North Plant is already, as you say, if you look in the thing, you can see it. And you don't know what's gonna happen up on the north side. If you get hotels in there, a couple hotels in there, you don't know what's gonna happen.
let's get the
And,
unincorporated to come in.
You gotta figure something 20 years from now. Because you don't know what the population's gonna be. I don't have to worry about it, but somebody has to worry about it. He's gonna be here for 20 years. He'll have to be worried if he's on the council. So will Wesley. He won't be able to use his washroom because there ain't no place to use it.
So I agree. I'm sorry for deviating, Gary. Now I'm convinced. I just wanted to go through and make sure. So
We gotta look for 20 years from now.
keep the
and
scope limited.
keep
Alderman
it-
Wesley?
Keep
I-
it going.
I agree, fine for new plant, but still, I still want to visit, trying to verify the old treatment plant before we commit to a full-blown new one.
Absolutely.
And we gotta look at that option.
This isn't the railroad to
Fine.
spend
Well,
30 million. This
that's
is just
fine.
to find out,
That's fine, but I'm just saying.
yeah. So, thank you, Gary, for getting us back on track. And Alderman Coles and Ptolemy. We can follow the parking ordinance, all right? So I'd make a motion to make a motion to approve proceeding forward, enter into negotiations with Baxter and Woodman for the wastewater treatment plant on conceptual engineering services. On the question, all in favor, say aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next items is items for future meetings. Item A is the engineering site grading review top foundation report, 2007 mosquito abatement program, South Plant conveyor installation. D is the IDOT MFT resolution. E is a School Street pond project. I would do that one after May. F is annexation of Phase 2. And then I think we're adding item G, which is the item for the stormwater management, which I think Dave brought up a good point. But the only thing I'm going to add to that is I don't necessarily know if it's going to be a 1 acre rule or a 2 acre rule. I almost think it has to be looked at a regional area. I take the last part of the thing we have left is along Wooddale Road, and if everybody in there comes in at 1 acre pieces, if 30 people came in and each at 1 acre, and we have the 1 acre rule, we'll have zero detention there. So you need to look at the area as a whole, and if it's 1 acre, 2 acres, that's one rule, but I think the sub rule has to be But in no event should an area of over 5 acres have 0 detention. So it's like a fallback where the city can say, you still got to put detention in there.
Yeah, and I think when it came to the Stormwater Commission, everyone agreed it was not a clear-cut black and
Easy.
white, so.
Right. So that's item G. Any other items for future meetings? If not, I make a motion to adjourn Public Works. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Okay. Moving on, I'd like to call the Community Economic Development Committee to order. I'm going to take a show. The same people are still present. I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of January 18th, 2007. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. First item we have is report and recommendation is TIF Phase 1 report. Basically, if everybody's had a chance to look at this, even the Kane McKenna and Associates are coming back now and saying that, you know, although the area could qualify as a TIF area, they don't feel it would be in the city's best interest, and saying that I don't think we need to make a recommendation other than that I would make a motion not to go forward with the area that we looked at as a TIF area at this time, and that staff continue to look at alternate areas. On a question? Okay, then items to be considered at future meetings, we have affordable housing study.
Call a vote on that one.
Oh, I'm sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Items to be considered at future meetings, affordable housing study, economic development consultant, preliminary report, designating a new TIF area to study, transitory development zoning, and does anybody have anything else? Hearing nothing, I may like to make a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.